Thank you so much for joining. We're so excited to be hosting this home safety webinar. My name is Misty Mousa-Lanza, and I'm Director of Business Partnerships from Univision Houston here. Today's Home Safe webinar is actually brought to you by Rebuilding Together Houston, which is a recognized leader in our community, serving single-family affordable housing for almost 40 years. And they have been working steadfast to repair homes, revitalize communities, and rebuild lives for over hundreds of families annually. And as we're spending more time at home, we have the opportunity to make some changes to our environment to be healthier and safer. And so today we've picked some hand-picked experts in two fields. One is for air quality, and the other one is for fire safety. And we're going to start first with Peter Gans. He has been promoting fire safety and serving as a firefighter in HFD, Houston Fire Department, for over 22 years. And we are so excited to have his knowledge and skill set with us today. He'll be sharing some home improvement items to keep us safe during these times. And we are so excited to have him. Welcome, Peter. So hi. So in 2019, the City of Houston Fire Department was called to answer approximately 350,000 incidences. That's a lot. And what we'd like to hear about from you is, what are some ways that we can prevent fire in our homes?
One of the easiest ways is through simple cleanliness. If we take the time to clean our stoves, underneath the drip pan, cleaning the lint out of our dryer screen, we get a lot of dryer fires because that lint builds up on the screen. Also, leaving candles unattended is a very large cause for fires. But another one that we don't really think about that often are extension cords. A lot of times, especially during the wintertime, people will try to put as many space heaters as they can around the house. And a lot of the times we find really light duty extension cords similar to this, very thin, very light duty. Extension cords are supposed to only be used temporarily and not used all the time. Using a light duty cord like that, or even plugging in multiple extension cords into the same socket, maybe on a surge protector, can overload that circuit breaker. If you are going to use an extension cord, I would definitely recommend using a heavier gauge or a thicker wire type with better insulation. But again, I would not recommend it for use 24/7.
That's good to know. So cleanliness is the first tip. And we wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor, AARP. If you are not familiar with AARP, they are an incredible mission-based member organization that has sponsored these series of informational sessions. And they work and are dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live as they age. They strengthen our communities and advocate for what matters most to families, such as topics as health, like health, safety, and life. AARP Home Fit is one resource that they offer. It focuses on home modifications so that people can age in place and go about daily activities that empower them to stay independent and injury-free. I encourage you all on the call to get to know AARP if you don't already. Their website is aarp.org/Houston. They offer amazing resources and services, and I highly recommend that you get to know who they are and reach out to them for additional information. So back to you, Peter. So you mentioned cleanliness. What is something else that we could potentially consider in terms of what as homeowners must we have in our homes that are the basics in order to be safe to prevent fires in our homes?
First and foremost, it's got to be a smoke detector. Everybody should have multiple smoke detectors throughout their house. and they need to check them regularly, a minimum of every 6 months. Something like this model, it's less than $5. It comes with its own battery. On the package, it says it's good for 3 years, but it's even got a little test button right here so that you can test it every so often. Every 6 months, we recommend. It also has a low battery chirp. And like I said, that's only $5. There are other types out there, such as this one. The battery in this one's good for 10 years. So basically, if you can get someone to install it, it's good for 10 years. You shouldn't have to worry about it. We also recommend, if you have natural gas, that you have a carbon monoxide detector, such as something like this. They even have smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors all in one, such as this model right here, again with a 10-year battery. Something else that I would highly recommend is the fire extinguishers, but I leave that up to the individual. Let's face it, not all of us are as strong as we once were in our youth, and maybe we have some breathing difficulties. The last thing I want is for someone to spray a dry chemical extinguisher, causing it harder for them to breathe. In the fire department, our #1 concern is your safety. We want you out of the building. But if you have a small hand fire on your stove and you have plenty of time to react and it's not too big, a model like this says you've got to get within 3 to 4 feet to spray it, and it opens and uses just like an aerosol can. Another option is an extinguisher like this. This allows you to hit the base of the fire about 10 feet away. And again, I would not suggest anyone use these until they read up or maybe even watch some videos on how to use them. We don't want you spending a lot of time in a toxic environment, which kind of leads us into the last thing. Is basically we want you to have a meeting point. If you live by yourself, or especially if you have someone else that lives with you, we want you to have a meeting point. Maybe it's at the big tree across the street, so that when the first arriving company gets there, they can let the officer know, hey, everybody's out of the house, or if someone is still inside, where they're located. That helps speed up the process when we're having to do a primary search of the residence.
Excellent. So far, to recap the tips: keep our homes clean, do the dirty lifting up front so that we can prevent fires. Fire detectors are a must. Make sure they're updated and test for batteries. Also, if we have natural gas in our homes, it's very important to consider a carbon monoxide detector as well. And you showed a dual one that's actually my favorite because you're covering 2 in 1. Consider extinguishers, right? And then also have that family plan in place. Meet out at the big tree or maybe at the neighbor's house that you know well, but have that conversation with your family now when you don't need to be having it versus later when you're in the heat of crisis, right? Literally and figuratively.
We have fire drills at school and at work. We rarely think about bringing that home.
It's so true.
So basically, the family members, if we can have everyone outside of the house, away from the house, that allows us more freedom to get in and do what we need to do.
Yes, and I think that we are being usurped with so much Corona conversation that these safety, like home safety basic tips, still need to be talked about in order to keep our families healthy and thriving and prevent any kind of crisis within our walls. So lastly, I mentioned earlier that the Houston Fire Department answered close to 350,000 calls in 2019. And of those, approximately 300,000 were EMS related. What tips from you, the expert, can you share with our audience regarding EMS related incidences? What can we do as families to better prepare so when EMS arrives, we're good to go with everything we need?
One thing that really helps us out the most is if the patient already has a information sheet or a fact sheet. Let's face it, when it's our family member that's in serious distress, we get emotional, we're tied to that patient, and we don't always think clearly. But if that patient had an information sheet that had their name, their past medical history, the medications that they're taking, any allergies to any medications, if they had something like that that was kept up to date, maybe printed up and put on their refrigerator, that helps us out immediately. That allows us to react quicker, to focus in on what could potentially be wrong with that patient, and administer the care and meds if necessary and transport to the hospital in need.
That's fabulous. And I can speak to that. That happened with my father. He's 88 years old, and my mother was just on top of it, handed over the list. And you could even see a sigh of relief from the EMS crew that were like, ah, yes, this is one of those families that's prepared. So thank you. That's a really great tip, because it saves time, and time is of the essence, right, on EMS calls.
Exactly. Now, there's also a link at the bottom of the website that has a sample fact sheet that the patient could fill out, or a family member could fill out for anybody.
Fabulous.
It's really easy to do.
So you can visit rebuildinghouston.org for that family information sheet, and help those EMS frontline workers when they arrive at your house. Okay, so to review, fire detectors: if there's natural gas in the homes, please have that carbon monoxide detector, potentially an extinguisher, family meeting plan, and that fact sheet with all of those details that could potentially save minutes, which could potentially save lives. Peter, thank you so much for your expertise today. You've been very concise and very easy to understand, and I hope that our audience is able to take away these 5 tips that you've shared with us. Moving on, so we talked about fire safety. We have also have the great pleasure of introducing Arcadio Saenz, who has actually been with Rebuilding Together Houston for many years. And Arcadio comes to us today with 16 years of home improvement expertise, and he currently works as the project coordinator with Rebuilding Together Houston, and has firsthand experience with air quality intervention programs, and has been implementing those tips and strategic efforts in over 300 homes impacted by Hurricane Harvey. Welcome, Arcadio.
Thank you, Misty.
Yes. So we know that the Environmental Protection Agency estimates that air inside our homes and offices are up to 5 times more polluted than even the smoggiest industrial towns. That to me is quite devastating, and I think it's timely that we have this conversation since we are at home so much today. So help us understand, what are some tips that you can share with us in terms of keeping the air quality within our homes to a higher standard?
Well, Misty, most people already are opening their windows and their doors to ventilate air in and out of their homes. And one of the main things that people don't realize is the timing of that. Early in the morning or late in the evening, or preferable times, because of the toxins that are in the air, once the cars start going on their commutes, or the exhaust coming out of the cars is polluting the air. So you want the fresh air, the cleanest air possible coming in. If you have little fans, you can put those in the window to circulate air in and out. One of the issues that we run into by opening our windows, especially here in Houston, is mosquitoes. And if you don't have screens, you can go to your local hardware store and pick up a kit that will have the screen kit and the screen itself, and you can make your own. You can go on YouTube and find out how to make it, how to measure it. One of the important things that most people will forget is the Spline Tool, which is this little tool that actually gets the screen to stick onto the frame itself. So that's one of the things that people would need to do if they're going to ventilate that way, especially with mosquito problems and the issues we have here in Houston with mosquitoes.
Absolutely. Okay, so keeping our AC units up to good quality airflow. especially now that we're in our homes, we would like to be comfortable. What are some things that people can do to make the AC units run smoother and work more effectively?
Well, AC units are already filtering the air and they're moving and cooling the air. If it's a window unit, which a lot of people have in Houston, there's a filter on the front of it that will periodically need to be cleaned. The more you use it, the more you're going to have to clean it. But it's better to be proactive than reactive, because most new ACs have a light on them that will say time to clean the filter. So what you're going to do in that instance is you're going to take the filter out, rinse it out with some soapy water, let it air dry, and then put it back in, and you're good to go. As far as whole house ACs go, there's different filtration systems. There's what's called a MERV, which is minimal efficiency reporting value. So that's MERV. So I brought a couple of filters in to show people. We have two. One is more expensive, one is less expensive. This is actually a MERV 2. And if I take my baby powder and I pour it, it goes just straight through. So that's what you're getting on a MERV 2. This other filter is a MERV 412. So you pour the powder, you don't get anything through. So that's a big difference. That's a big issue right there. A lot of people tend to go with the inexpensive filter because, hey, it's inexpensive, it's just doing this. But what they don't realize is it's allowing everything through that's going to get on their coils and cause their AC to run less efficiently.
Wow. Okay. So MERV 2 bad, MERV 412 good.
MERV, yeah, anything above probably 5 or so is good. And being pleated, because it gives you more coverage. The pleated filters are a lot better because of the coverage they give you, and they're going to be filtering out a lot more.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. That was actually stunning how much of the pollutants come through the more inexpensive filters. Just a quick question. How often should we be changing our filters in our AC unit?
The lower end pleated filters probably once a month. The one I showed says it's good for 90 days, but you know, open your filter or open your grate every once in a while and look at it. And if it's discolored and looks like it's dirty, get rid of it. If you hear your air conditioner like trying to breathe and it's hard for it to breathe, it's probably time to check that filter and change it. If you see that filter getting sucked in, it means it's caught a lot of particles and it can't breathe. So you want your AC to breathe.
I definitely don't want that filter that is not filtering the particulates, because when my father has COPD and when he comes, I want to make sure that our air quality is top notch. But also it's twofold, right? So it's guarding us against pulmonary infection, disease, asthma, allergies. But additionally, it's helping our energy units run more efficiently. So it's a 2-for-1 when we get that MERV 5 or greater, right?
Right.
Perfect.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
So last question for you. With the increased flooding in Houston, we're all used to this, right? Many of us have become more and more conscious of the mold spore growth that comes from the sustained dampness within our homes, that we don't even really know where they are. What are some of the common areas that we need to be checking for mold to make sure that we don't have that in our homes?
Well, Misty, anywhere where you have a water supply or a water drain, you want to check those areas. And what you're looking for is discoloration in sheetrock or swelling in wood. If you look underneath your sink and your P-trap is leaking, you'll see a puddle of water there, and you'll see the wood that's underneath there starting to absorb it and swell. If you have swelling or you have discoloration of sheetrock, that usually means a leak. And you want to get that fixed as soon as possible, because leaks tend to lead to mold. If you have a spot on the ceiling and you notice it's getting bigger, you probably have a leak in your roof and you want to get that checked out as soon as possible. Because the longer we neglect those issues, the more likely that mold will appear.
Okay, so leaks lead to mold. If we see any kind of discoloration of sheetrock, wood rotting or swelling, we really need to take a look at that and not be in denial. Because I think often we're like, oh, I think that's a leak, but I don't really want to deal with it. Let's move on, right? But the is going to be greater if we sit on it. And that's really
correct.
Part of your mission at Rebuilding Together Houston is to help folks so they don't have to rip out walls, but get in there and prevent those things as soon as possible, right?
Correct.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Arcadio. So we have a couple of questions that we'd like to share. One of them is, well, we talked about one of them. It's the EMS fact sheet that we need, that we can find on the Rebuilding Together Houston.org website, right? Question for Peter.
Yes.
Actually, air quality question. So, Arcadio, my son actually has some pretty bad allergies. Is there anything else that I can do to relieve his allergies and prevent that in my home? I know you talked about the filters, but anything else that I could do to prevent?
If you get an air purifier, a HEPA air purifier, I believe it cuts 99.5% of allergens and mold and other things in the air. So they're usually just room size. So if you're trying to do a whole house, maybe going with a HEPA filter in your AC. But if it just in his room itself, if he spends a lot of time in there, especially when he's asleep at night, if you can get a HEPA air filter, air purifier in there, that would help out immensely because it would remove a lot of the allergens out of the air.
So this HEPA filter purifier is something that I can change and put in room to room?
It's a portable unit.
Okay.
It's no bigger than a small fan, you know, those tower fans that are 3 feet high, 6 inches, 8 inches wide. And people confuse them for fans, but they're purifiers. They have 2 filters. There's this double filtration system. There's a pre-filter that's going to catch all the hair and everything. And then there's the HEPA filter that's in the machine itself. The pre-filter you would clean every month. The HEPA filter, the filters inside of the machine itself, you would clean every 3 months. And according to the manufacturer, they last as long as the machine will last. You never have to change those out.
Fabulous. Well, we have learned a lot today. Thank you so much for the tips, the fire detectors, the carbon monoxide detectors, extinguishers, family meeting plan, the fact sheet, being cleanly, changing our screens, looking at getting higher quality screens to eliminate particulate matter, and checking for leaks, discoloration, wood swelling. All of these things are preventative measures that we can do in our homes to take care of our families and prevent greater problems. I want to thank you all both for giving us tips today. You guys are experts. You've given me so much to consider and discuss with my family. And I want to also thank Rebuilding Together, the entire team. Rebuilding Together team is outstanding. I've completely fallen in love with all of you. And thank our sponsor, AARP, as well, because without them, we couldn't have come together as a team to collaborate and share these incredible preventative tips with all of you and our audience. Additionally, I just want to remind everyone that there will be 2 more of these webinars coming up. July 8th, covering AARP Home Fit Guide, featuring ways to make your home safer with accessibility modifications. And then also July 29th, we'll be covering webinar to prevent slips, trips, and falls, and pest control. Additionally, all of the participants today will receive a link to the recorded webinar, and you will also receive a quick survey and invitations to the future webinars that I mentioned. Any information or questions, please send to info@rebuildinghouston.org. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to continuing our conversations and continuing these webinars with home safe tactics and tips from the experts at Rebuilding Together. Thank you so much, everyone.